Let's take a step back, looking at Neotel. You launched in 2006. You've been fully operational for the past 3 years. Tell us how you took the company from zero to where it is today.
It's been a journey of interesting milestones, I should say, in spite and despite of the fact that the whole process of second network operator in some sense was dogged by some of the legal issues and other pieces and portions. But be that as it may, we moved on from there and went ahead in terms of creating a great infrastructure, creating a great team, and then thereafter going after the customer. So it's been quite a journey, and very often people tend to forget about the fact in terms of what we have achieved so far.
Well, it's interesting. You came into a market where there was only one major fixed line player, that being Telkom. Tell us about the challenges that you experienced coming in and facing a monopoly head on.
Well, the telecom companies are never built in a day. They are built over a period of time. And we started off, as I said, the very first thing was to get a good team in place. So we had issues around getting the right skills of people. And then we started to be part of the solution by opening a telecoms academy as well to train some people and then get them on board. And we kind of, did a little bit of a ripple effect of getting the right people one after the other. And then we spent huge amount of money and effort in terms of creating the infrastructure all around. First of its kind in South Africa. Very clearly in terms of laying down over 4,000 kilometers of fiber in the different metro areas, and then getting access to the national long distance network of almost about 12,000 kilometers. So in true sense and spirit, it's an infrastructure driven telecom company that we ended up creating. And now we are at a point where some of the new, as I call it, the managed services pieces are coming into being as well.
Tell us about how much you've spent in infrastructure over the past 5 years.
Oh, we have spent almost close to 4.5 billion rands in terms of creating the infrastructure, which is, as I said, is the first cornerstone of any telecom company. That's a huge amount. You can't spend that money in a day. I mean, you have to work through all the issues to make that kind of investment.
From the startup phase, now perhaps heading into the growth phase when it comes to Neotel, tell us about the changes that you've implemented since the beginning of the company.
Well, when we began to set the network, we wanted to bring in the first, as I call it, new generation network. In telecoms language, that's one pipe through which you are able to get both voice data as well as internet in one connection itself. That's number one. Number two was the flexibility, scalability, and how easy it would be for people to upgrade their services. And I think there was a latent need of those services in South Africa. So all of that has now been put in place for us to take the company forward.
You mentioned that a company, and perhaps even more so a telecoms company, cannot be built in a day. Looking at some market perceptions over the past couple of months, it seems that most of the media and market players are focusing on three major events: financial performance, the fact that you will be moving on as CEO after 5 years at the company, and the fact that we are seeing realignment as well. What do you make of these perceptions?
First and foremost, let me clarify that these are three independent events planned at 3 different times, and I can touch upon each one of them. But I think some script writers have very conveniently, woven a story around it. Let me first say that the first one, which is about the financial results, that pertains to year of 09-010. So it's like a 12 months historical information and data. That's point number one. Point number two is any telecom company begins to become EBITDA positive in the 3rd to 4th year of their operation, which is exactly where we are. And then 4th year you become PBT positive, and then 5th year you become PAT positive, and that's exactly the tracking which we are following as far as our life cycle is concerned. So that is on the financial side. On the realignment side, I think 5 years was just the natural, logical time for us to take a step back and see what has changed in the company, what has changed in the market. Let's not forget, a lot of things have changed in the market since we started. You have many more players who are operating today, many more licenses that have been given, plus the fact that we went ahead and made an acquisition. So we kind of grew both by design and default. So every business takes a pause to say how we are aligned. So that's the realignment side of it. Many of other industry players have also done it. Despite of that fact, we hadn't touched anything so far. So we are now taking a call at it. And the third one being, which is absolutely an independent thing about my exiting from here, I think if I look around in the industry, I've been the longest serving CEO in the last 5 years in the South African telecommunications industry, and that too coming from a different place. So I think it's a very logical and natural step of handing over the company through a different life cycle to a new leader to take the company to the next level, if you will, in that sense.
Well, Mr. Pandey, it sounds as if you are on target at this point in time from a financial perspective. You're talking about the realignment, which most companies, as you mentioned, pause and take a look at the cyclical nature of businesses as well. Tell us about the realignment at this point in time, and also how your vision perhaps has changed from the beginning to where we are today in the light of also more competition, as you alluded to.
Yeah. In terms of realignment, it's about refocusing the right skills of people at the right places in the company, because the market has changed very clearly. When we had come in there, or rather I should say very humbly that when I had come in here, the telecommunications pricing, particularly in terms of internet access, etc., were very, very high as far as the global benchmarks were concerned. So one of the key things that I had in mind at that time was to make sure that Neotel was able to contribute towards making a very tangible difference in the life cycle of people in South Africa, going right from the enterprise space down to every other segment of the market. So we actually invested a lot in infrastructure, and one of the key things which we did was to open up the international bandwidth connectivity, which is what today is resulting into lowering down of the internet prices or some of the uncapped DSLs and other offers which you see. So in that sense, we have made a tangible difference in the market.
Let's touch on Sunil Joshi, the new CEO for Neotel. You're talking about a transition happening at Neotel, and of course there's also a handover period. What role can we expect you to play in this handover period?
Look, in terms of the decision was taken way back in October, November, which is when I completed 5 years for the company. So my successor, which is Sunil Joshi, who's a very capable individual, is coming on board. In fact, he started visiting the company already. The way it would work is that I would step down on 31st of March, and he takes over obviously from 1st of April. And then I am going to be around almost for about a quarter, so to speak, to help him to iron out any other issues or customer relationships and all the other pieces. So it's part of a planned transition process that's going on currently.
As I mentioned, the market seems to be focusing on those three events that we were talking about a little earlier. What message do you have for the market and those that perhaps are focusing on the negative side of things?
Well, I think people have conveniently forgotten the fact that we have now become an operator in true sense and spirit. We are no longer a PowerPoint company, if you will, and there's a real infrastructure competition which is available as far as telecoms operations is concerned. We have brought in what is called the competition in the international bandwidth space. In fact, we were the first company, apart from the incumbent, to have brought in that sort of an access. And thirdly, even in terms of pricing, I think we have made a difference. Almost 30 to 40% of price reduction has already happened. So there has been a tangible difference.
Let's touch on the fixed line space as a whole. Time and time again, we hear telecoms analysts saying there is no real room for fixed line operators, and perhaps the profitability is also in question. But now we've also seen renewed interest from other players such as MTN and Vodacom. Your view on the fixed line space going forward, and your role going forward as well in terms of market share?
Let me answer your second question first. In terms of our market share, when we had launched, we had anticipated to get almost about 14 to 15% of market share in revenue terms from the incumbent, and I think we are pretty much on track for that. We are already in the double-digit percentage area very, very clearly. As far as the your other question is concerned, I don't know how much of detail you want me to get into, but the whole notion of fixed line has changed. Because there's nothing called fixed line today, so to speak. The technology has overtaken the definition of fixed line. In fact, some of the landline phones which we are offering to our customers are on the wireless mode itself. So there is nothing fixed. You can use the phone, at least the Neotel phone, either next to the pool, next to the kitchen, next to your bedroom, or wherever it is. So I think the whole notion has changed. It should be more now defined as infrastructure-driven telecom player rather than just the fixed line player.
You were talking about competition in the industry and the fact that Neotel has been instrumental in bringing down rates in South Africa. Can we ever see rates at the similar levels that we see in India, a very developed market, and it's all about volumes as opposed to margins?
I wish we could see some of those rates, but I think it will be fair to say that while the drop in prices is essential, we should also be a little bit rational in terms of expectation as well as delivery. Pricing should just not come down in a sort of an absolute terms. We should also begin to get, give our customers more bang for the buck, as I call it. And that's what is far more important than just seeing the absolute pricing coming down.
Let's touch on Neotel listing on the JSE going forward, and perhaps you could tie that in with your vision for the company over the next 5, 10, 15 years.
We would like to see Neotel getting listed on the JSE for sure. There's no doubt about it. I think the issue is about timing. And as I said, we are in the we have just completed third year of our operations. We are moving on to fourth and fifth year, which is when the financial parameters become that much more visible and stronger. And that probably is the right time for us to take the company for listing. As far as vision is concerned, I would very much like this company to continue on the course of continuing to make difference in the lives of people of South Africa. We have made 3 or 4 very tangible differences, as I said, in terms of international connectivity, national infrastructure alternative, and bringing some of the real good wireless technologies onto the play. I think, a few years down the road, 10 to 15, 20 years down the road, I think it should become a company which is not only confined itself only within the shores of South Africa, it should also begin to look beyond South Africa in terms of making a difference.
Fantastic, Mr. Pandey. We have to leave it there, but thank you.